Dr. Jai-Ho Park rubbed his tired eyes and stared at the computer screen once more. The numbers weren't making sense, but that was exactly what made them interesting. For 3 months now, he had been tracking unusual patterns in the movement of objects in the outer solar system, and something was definitely wrong. He reached for his coffee mug, only to find it empty. The clock on his office wall at the Korean Space Research Institute showed 11:30 p.m. Most of his colleagues had gone home hours ago, but he couldn't leave. Not when he was this close to understanding what the data meant. A soft knock on his door made him look up. Dr. Na-young Kim stood in the doorway, her own coffee mug in hand. "I thought you might need this," she said, walking over to place a fresh cup of coffee on his desk. Na-young had been his research partner for 5 years, and she knew his late-night habits well. "Look at this," Jai-Ho said, pointing to his screen. "The objects beyond Neptune. They're not moving the way they should. It's as if something massive is pulling on them, but we can't see what it is." Na-young pulled up a chair and looked at the data. Her eyes widened as she scrolled through the numbers. "These calculations, have you double-checked them?" "Triple-checked," Jai-Ho replied. "I've been running the numbers for weeks. At first, I thought it might be Planet 9. You know, the big planet everyone thinks might be out there. But this is different. The gravitational effect is too strong, too focused." Na-young started typing quickly, pulling up more data from their space telescope observations. If we compare the orbital patterns from 6 months ago to now, she worked in silence for a few minutes, then sat back in her chair. "Jai-Ho, this is bigger than Planet 9. Much bigger." Jai-Ho nodded slowly. "I think I know what it might be, but it sounds crazy." He paused, taking a sip of the fresh coffee. "What if it's not a planet at all? What if it's a black hole?" Na-young didn't laugh or dismiss the idea, which was one of the things Jai-Ho appreciated most about working with her. Instead, she turned back to the computer and began running new calculations. A black hole. It would need to be very small, maybe the mass of Earth or less. A primordial black hole from the early universe. They worked together for the next few hours, testing their theory against the data. The more they looked, the more it made sense. The gravitational patterns matched what they would expect from a small black hole perfectly. As the first light of dawn began to show through the office window, Jai-Ho and Na-young looked at each other. They both knew they were onto something huge. If they were right, they had just discovered the first known black hole in our solar system, one that had been hiding in plain sight for billions of years. "We need to tell the director," Na-young said, gathering their preliminary findings. "But first, we should get Do-hyun to check our work. He has a good eye for errors, and we want to be absolutely sure." Jai-Ho agreed. Do-hyun Lee was the youngest member of their team, but his mathematical skills were exceptional. If there was a mistake in their calculations, he would find it. They sent an early morning email to Do-hyun, asking him to come in as soon as possible. Then they sat back, both exhausted but too excited to feel tired. If they were right, this discovery would change everything we knew about our solar system. "One small black hole," Jai-Ho said quietly, looking at the data one more time. "Just sitting out there beyond Neptune all this time, affecting everything around it. How did we miss it for so long?" Na-young smiled. "Sometimes the biggest discoveries are hiding right in our own backyard. We just need to know where to look." As the sun rose over Seoul, neither scientist went home. They stayed in the office, drinking coffee and double-checking their findings. They both knew that this was just the beginning. Proving the existence of a black hole in our solar system would take more than one night's work. It would take months or even years of careful research and observation. But they had taken the first step. They had found something that no one else had noticed, and now they couldn't unsee it. The solar system they thought they knew so well had just become a much more interesting place. Do-hyun Lee arrived at the institute early the next morning. Despite being only 26 years old, he had already earned a reputation as one of the best mathematical minds in the country. When he saw the email from Dr. Park and Dr. Kim, he knew it had to be important. They never called him in early unless something extraordinary had happened. He found them both still in Dr. Park's office, surrounded by empty coffee cups and printouts covered in calculations. They looked tired but excited. "We need you to check these numbers," Dr. Park said, handing Do-hyun a thick stack of papers. "Take your time. We want to be completely sure." Do-hyun sat down at a spare desk and began working through the calculations. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the sound of his pencil scratching on paper and the quiet hum of computers. Around noon, he finally looked up. "The math is correct," he said simply. "All of it. And I think I found something else too." He showed them a new set of calculations he had done. "If we look at the data from a different angle, we can actually estimate the black hole's size. It's tiny, smaller than a basketball." Dr. Kim leaned forward, but with the mass of Earth compressed into that small space. "Amazing." She turned to Dr. Park. "We need to tell the director now. And we should contact Dr. Hee-jun Choi at NASA." The Institute's director listened to their presentation with growing interest. When they finished explaining, she immediately authorized them to use more telescope time for further observations. She also helped them arrange a video call with Dr. Choi, who was one of NASA's top experts on black holes. The video call was scheduled for the next day. None of the team went home that night. They were too busy preparing their presentation and gathering more data. Do-hyun discovered that by analyzing older telescope data from the past decade, they could actually track how the black hole had been affecting nearby objects for years. No one had noticed the pattern before because no one had been looking for it. When Dr. Choi's face appeared on the screen the next morning, he looked skeptical. But as they showed him their evidence, his expression changed to one of growing excitement. "This is remarkable," he said after studying their data. "If you're right, and your calculations certainly look correct, this would be the first confirmed primordial black hole ever found. And it's been right here in our solar system all along." Dr. Choi promised to help them get time on NASA's more powerful telescopes for additional observations. He also warned them to keep their discovery quiet for now, until they had absolute proof. But news this big couldn't stay secret for long. Within a week, rumors began spreading through the scientific community. Other astronomers started looking at the outer solar system with new interest, and soon more data began coming in from observatories around the world. Each new observation supported their theory. The gravitational patterns couldn't be explained by anything else. There had to be a small but incredibly massive object out there, and a primordial black hole was the only thing that fit all the evidence. 2 weeks after their initial discovery, Dr. Park sat in his office looking at the latest data from NASA's telescopes. The images showed several objects in the outer solar system moving in precisely the paths their calculations had predicted. It was the final proof they needed. "We did it," he said quietly, as Dr. Kim and Do-hyun looked at the images with him. "We actually found it." Do-hyun nodded, still staring at the screen. "A black hole that's been part of our solar system since before Earth existed. Just think of everything we could learn from studying it." Dr. Kim was already making notes. "We'll need to design new ways to observe it. Regular telescopes won't be enough. We need equipment specifically designed to study something like this." As they began discussing plans for future observations, all three scientists knew that their discovery was just the beginning. They had opened a new chapter in humanity's understanding of the solar system, and there was still so much more to learn. Dr. Sun-Mei Kang adjusted her microphone and looked directly at the camera. As Korea's leading science communicator, she had explained many complex scientific discoveries to the public before, but this was different. This news would change how people viewed their place in the solar system. "Yes, there is a black hole in our solar system," she began, speaking clearly and calmly. "But this is not a reason to panic. This black hole has been here for billions of years, longer than Earth itself. It is very far away, beyond Neptune, and it will stay there." The press conference room was packed with reporters from around the world. Dr. Park, and Dr. Kim sat beside her, ready to answer technical questions. They had spent days preparing for this moment, knowing how important it was to explain their discovery correctly. Think of it as a very small but very heavy ball, Sunmi continued, holding up a basketball. If you could squeeze all of Earth's mass into something this size, it would become a black hole. The one we discovered is even smaller, about the size of a tennis ball. The reporters started asking questions all at once. Sunmi noticed how some of them seemed frightened, while others looked excited. She called on them one by one, making sure to keep her answers simple and clear. "No, it cannot pull Earth into it," she explained to one worried reporter. "It is too far away. The same gravity that has kept it in its orbit for billions of years will continue to keep it there." But despite their careful explanations, fear began to spread. Within days, social media was filled with scary stories about the black hole. Some people claimed it was moving closer to Earth. Others said it would soon swallow the whole solar system. Dr. Park watched these stories spread with growing concern. "We need to do more," he told Dr. Kim and Sunmi during an emergency meeting. "People are afraid because they don't understand. We must help them understand." Sunmi had an idea. She worked with the research team to create simple videos showing how the black hole affected the solar system. They used easy-to-understand comparisons and clear graphics. The videos showed how the black hole's gravity had actually helped shape the solar system, making it more stable. "It's like having an extra weight on a mobile," she explained in one video, showing a hanging mobile with planets. "It helps keep everything balanced. Our solar system might be different without it." The videos started to make a difference. People began to share them instead of the scary stories. Schools used them to teach students about gravity and space. Even adults found them helpful in understanding the discovery. Dr. Kim also started a website where people could track the black hole's position in real time. "See," she would tell visitors to the institute, "it stays in its orbit, just like the planets do. It has been doing this for billions of years." By the end of the month, the panic had mostly calmed down. People were starting to see the discovery as exciting rather than frightening. Scientists from different countries were making plans to study the black hole together. This is why clear communication is so important in science, Sunmi told her colleagues one evening. When people understand something, they stop being afraid of it. They start being curious instead. Dr. Park nodded in agreement, and curiosity is what drives science forward. Now that people understand what we found, they want to know more about it. They want to help us study it. The discovery had changed how people thought about space, but not in the way many at first feared. Instead of bringing panic, it had brought wonder. People looked up at the night sky differently now, knowing that out there, far beyond the visible planets, was something remarkable. A tiny piece of the early universe, still orbiting our sun after all these billions of years. Tae-Won-yoon couldn't sleep. He had been working at Korea's space agency for 3 years as an engineer, but this was his first big idea. Tomorrow, he would present his plan to send a probe to study the black hole up close. His hand shook slightly as he reviewed his presentation one more time. "You need to rest," his colleague Min Ji-song told him. As the agency's best spacecraft designer, she had helped him develop the plans. "The presentation is ready. You know this will work." The next morning, Tae-Won stood before a room full of scientists and engineers, including Dr. Park and Dr. Kim. His voice was steady as he began to speak. "We can build a probe to study the black hole," he said, showing them his designs. "We'll call it the Event Horizon Probe. It will carry special instruments to measure gravity waves and radiation, and we can get it there faster than any spacecraft has ever traveled before." Min-ji stepped forward to explain the spacecraft's design. "We'll use the gravity of Jupiter and Saturn to boost its speed," she said, pointing to her drawings. "Like a slingshot effect, this will save fuel and cut years off the journey time." The room grew quiet as they showed more details. The probe would carry new types of sensors, designed specifically to study a small black hole. It would also have powerful cameras to photograph anything orbiting near the black hole. Dr. Park raised his hand. How will it send data back to Earth from so far away? Taiwan smiled. This was the part he was most proud of. We've designed a new type of communication system, he explained. It uses quantum entanglement to send signals. The data will reach Earth instantly, no matter how far away the probe is. The scientists in the room started whispering to each other. This was new technology. It had never been used on a spacecraft before. But if it worked, it would change space exploration forever. Dr. Kim studied the plans carefully. The cost will be high, she said. We'll need help from other countries. I've already talked to NASA, Taiwan replied. Dr. Choi thinks they will want to join the project. The European Space Agency is interested too. This can be a mission for all of humanity. Minji showed them more designs. The probe would be built in sections, with different countries making different parts. Korea would design the main computer systems and the quantum communication device. NASA would build the engines and navigation systems. Europe would make the scientific instruments. We can launch in 3 years if we start now, Minji said. The planets will be in the right positions then. It's our best chance. The room was silent for a moment after they finished. Then Dr. Park stood up. This is exactly what we need, he said. This probe could answer questions we haven't even thought to ask yet. Over the next few weeks, space agencies from around the world joined the project. Scientists and engineers from different countries began working together, sharing ideas and solving problems. Taiwan and Minji worked long hours, improving their designs and answering questions from other engineers. Sometimes they would look at each other and smile, still amazed that their idea was becoming real. Just think, Minji said one evening as they studied their plans, in a few years, we'll be the first humans to send a machine to study a black hole up close. We'll see things no one has ever seen before. Taiwan nodded. He was tired but happy. Their probe would travel farther and faster than any spacecraft in history. It would study one of the strangest objects in space, and it would bring the world together in a way that only great scientific projects could. The hard part starts now, he said, looking at all the work ahead of them. But we'll do it. We have to. This is our chance to understand something amazing. Flight Director Hyun-Woo Kwon sat in the control room, his eyes fixed on the main screen. 3 years of preparation had led to this moment. The Event Horizon probe sat on the launch pad, ready for its historic journey. Weather conditions are perfect, reported mission specialist Yi Jin-shin, checking the latest data. All systems are showing green. The control room was packed with scientists and engineers from around the world. Dr. Park and Dr. Kim sat in the front row, while Taiwan and Minji watched nervously from their engineering stations. Everyone knew that this launch would make history. T-minus 60 minutes, Hyun-Woo announced into his microphone. His voice was calm, but his heart was racing. This was the biggest mission he had ever directed. Yi Jin began the final checks. One by one, she called out to different teams, making sure everything was ready. The probe's systems were all working perfectly. Its new quantum communication device, designed by Korean scientists, had passed every test. Fuel loading complete, she reported. Battery levels at 100%. Solar panels secured. In the 3 years since the project began, the probe had grown more advanced than anyone had first planned. Scientists from different countries had added new instruments, each one designed to learn something different about the black hole. T-minus 30 minutes, Hyun-Woo called out. He looked at the screens showing the rocket from different angles. Everything looked perfect. Minji touched the lucky pencil she always carried. She had used it to draw the first designs of the probe, and now she kept it with her for important moments. Taiwan saw her nervous gesture and gave her a reassuring smile. T-minus 15 minutes. Dr. Park leaned forward in his seat. He thought about that night 3 years ago when he and Dr. Kim had first discovered the black hole's signs. Now they were about to launch humanity's first mission to study it up close. T-minus 5 minutes. The room grew quieter. Everyone watched the countdown clock, hardly daring to breathe. Years of work, billions of dollars, and the hopes of scientists around the world all rested on the next few minutes. T-minus 1 minute. Yi Jin's fingers flew over her keyboard, making final checks. Everything was still perfect. The weather was clear, all systems were ready, and the probe was prepared for its long journey. 10, 9, 8. Hyun-woo gripped his armrests tightly. 7, 6, 5. Min-ji held her lucky pencil. 4, 3, 2. Dr. Park and Dr. Kim held their breath. 1. Ignition. The rocket's engines roared to life. Flames burst from the bottom of the rocket, and slowly, majestically, it began to rise from the launch pad. "We have liftoff," Hyun-woo announced, his voice strong and clear. "Event Horizon is on its way." The control room erupted in cheers as the rocket climbed higher and higher. On their screens, they could see it rising through the clouds, right on its planned course. "First stage performing perfectly," Yi Jin reported. "All systems normal." Minutes passed as they watched the rocket climb. Each stage separated exactly as planned, falling away as the probe rose higher and higher. Finally, after what seemed like hours but was really just minutes, Yi Jin made the announcement they had all been waiting for. "Event Horizon has reached its planned orbit," she called out. "The solar panels are deploying. We have power. The probe is alive and responding to commands." The room burst into celebration. People hugged each other, laughed, and some even cried. They had done it. The probe was safely in space, ready to begin its journey to the mysterious black hole. Hyun-woo sat back in his chair, finally allowing himself to smile. "First step complete," he said quietly. "Now for the long journey ahead." The Event Horizon probe was on its way, carrying humanity's hopes and questions toward the strangest object ever found in our solar system. Its journey had just begun. Project scientist Jin-Ho Ryu stared at the data coming in from the Event Horizon probe. 6 months had passed since the launch, and the spacecraft was already past Mars, moving faster than any human-made object in history. "Look at these readings," he said to Dr. Park, pointing at his screen. "The space around us is different from what we expected." The probe's new instruments were picking up strange patterns in space itself. It was as if the fabric of space-time was being pulled and stretched in ways they had never seen before. "Send this data to Dr. Kim right away," Dr. Park said, studying the numbers carefully. "She needs to see this." In another room, Min-ji and Taiwan were monitoring the probe's systems. The quantum communication device was working perfectly, sending data back to Earth instantly. Every day, they learned something new about how their spacecraft was performing in deep space. "The gravity boosters are ready," Min-ji reported. "We'll reach Jupiter in 2 weeks. That's when things get really interesting." The team had planned to use Jupiter's gravity to throw the probe faster toward its target. It was like a slingshot in space. The probe would swing around Jupiter, using the planet's huge gravity to gain speed. On the day of the Jupiter flyby, everyone gathered in the control room. This was the riskiest part of the journey so far. If anything went wrong, they could lose the probe. Beginning Jupiter approach, Yi Jin announced from her station, "All systems normal." They watched as the probe sent back the first close-up images of Jupiter. The giant planet filled their screens, its storms and clouds more beautiful than they had ever seen. But they couldn't spend time looking at Jupiter. They had work to do. "Gravity boost starting now," Hyun-woo called out. "Speed is increasing." The probe swung around Jupiter exactly as planned. When it came out the other side, it was moving even faster than before. But something strange happened during the flyby. The probe's instruments recorded unusual patterns in space around Jupiter. "These readings," Jin-Ho said, looking at the new data, "they're similar to what we saw before, but stronger. The black hole isn't just affecting the outer solar system. Its influence reaches all the way to Jupiter. Dr. Kim studied the patterns carefully. This changes everything we thought we knew, she said. The black hole might have helped form our entire solar system. It might be why our planets orbit the way they do. Months passed as the probe continued its journey. It passed Saturn, using that planet's gravity for another speed boost. Each time it passed a planet, it recorded more strange patterns in space. It's like a web, Jin Ho explained during a team meeting. The black hole and the sun work together, creating a pattern of gravity that holds everything in place. We've been living in this pattern our whole lives, but we never knew it was there. As the probe moved into the outer solar system, it began to detect more signs of the black hole's presence. The space around them was becoming different. Light bent in strange ways. Time itself seemed to flow differently out there. The probe is working better than we hoped, Ta-1 told Min-ji one evening. Everything we added to it, every instrument and sensor, they're all finding things we never expected to find. Min-ji nodded, still holding her lucky pencil. We thought we were building a probe to study a black hole, she said. But we're really studying the whole solar system in a new way. We're learning how it all works together. The Event Horizon probe continued its journey, sending back more surprises every day. The team worked long hours, trying to understand everything they were learning. They knew they were seeing things that no human had ever seen before. The black hole was still far away, but already it was teaching them new things about their cosmic home. The solar system was turning out to be even stranger and more wonderful than anyone had imagined. After 2 years of travel, the Event Horizon probe finally reached its destination. The control room was silent as the first clear readings came in from the edge of the solar system. Something's not right, Dr. Park said, staring at his screen. These readings, they're impossible. Dr. Kim moved to look at his display. Her eyes widened as she saw the data. The black hole wasn't just sitting in empty space, it was surrounded by something artificial. We need to get better pictures, she said. Gae-jin, can you turn on all the probe's cameras? Yi-jin Shin nodded and sent the commands. Moments later, the first images appeared on their screens. Everyone in the room gasped. Around the black hole was a giant ring-shaped structure, clearly built by intelligent beings. It was made of a material they had never seen before, and it glowed with a faint blue light. The structure seemed to be containing the black hole, keeping it stable in its orbit. It's a machine, Ta-1 said in amazement. Someone built this. Someone knew the black hole was here and built something around it. Dr. Young-Soo Baek, a xenorchaeologist who had recently joined the team, studied the images carefully. This structure is old, he said. Very old. Look at the patterns of wear on its surface. This has been here for millions of years, maybe billions. The probe's instruments showed that the ring was made of materials that didn't exist naturally. It was using the black hole's energy in some way, but they couldn't understand how or why. Send the probe closer, Dr. Park ordered. We need to see everything. As the probe moved nearer to the structure, it discovered more amazing things. There were symbols carved into the ring's surface, a form of writing no human had ever seen before. The structure was also sending out very weak signals, like a machine that was still running after all this time. This changes everything, Dr. Baek said. We're not just looking at a black hole anymore. We're looking at proof that we're not alone in the universe. Someone was here before us. Someone who could build things we can barely understand. Jin Ho looked at the data from the quantum sensors. The structure isn't just containing the black hole, he reported. It's using it. The black hole's gravity is powering something inside the ring. It's like a giant engine. Dr. Kim thought about what this meant. An ancient civilization built this, she said. They found this black hole and turned it into a power source. But why? What were they using the power for? The probe spent the next few weeks studying every part of the structure it could reach. They found more writing, more strange machines, and evidence that the ring had once been part of something even bigger. "Look at these connection points," Minji said, pointing to parts of the ring. "This wasn't built here. It was brought here, piece by piece. Someone took apart something huge and left this part behind." The news of their discovery spread quickly around the world. People everywhere were amazed to learn that not only was there a black hole in the solar system, but it had been used by an ancient alien civilization. Dr. Bake worked day and night, trying to understand the symbols on the ring. "These aren't just decoration," he explained to the team. "This is a message. They left this here for someone to find. They wanted future civilizations to know they were here." As they studied the structure more closely, they realized it was more than just a power plant or a message. It was doing something to the space around it, something that affected the entire solar system. "The patterns we saw on the journey here," Jinho said excitedly. "They weren't natural. This machine has been helping keep our solar system stable for billions of years. These aliens didn't just visit our solar system. They helped protect it." The team worked tirelessly to understand what they had found. Each new discovery led to more questions. Who were these beings? Why did they build this? Where did they go? The answers were still out there, waiting to be found. 1 year after the discovery of the alien structure, the Korean Space Research Institute had changed completely. New buildings had been built, and scientists from all over the world now worked there. Project historian Se-young-oh watched from her office as another group of researchers arrived. "It's amazing how much has changed," she said to Dr. Park, who had stopped by to check on her work. "And it all started with you noticing something strange in your data." Dr. Park smiled. He looked tired but happy. The past year had been busy for everyone. "How is the official record coming along?" he asked. Se-young showed him her computer screen. She was writing the history of their discovery and everything that had happened since. It would be the most important scientific story ever told. "The hardest part is helping people understand what this means for humanity," she explained. "We're not alone in the universe. We never were. And now we have proof." In another part of the institute, Dr. Bake was teaching a class of young scientists. He had finally decoded some of the alien writing on the ring structure. On his screen was a simple message that had been repeated many times on the ring. "To those who find this, welcome to the community of spacefaring peoples. When you are ready, use this gift to join us among the stars." The Event Horizon probe was still sending back data every day. Minji and Taiwan had become experts at operating it, learning new things about the alien structure all the time. They discovered that the ring wasn't just containing the black hole. It was also a library, filled with scientific knowledge left behind by its builders. "They wanted us to find this," Taiwan told a group of visiting engineers. "They left it here like a textbook, waiting for us to be smart enough to read it." Dr. Kim spent most of her time studying the way the ring used the black hole's power. "If we can understand this technology," she often said, "we could solve Earth's energy problems forever. The aliens showed us it's possible. Now we just have to learn how they did it." Jinho had made another exciting discovery. The quantum communication system they had built for the probe was very similar to something described in the alien library. "We were already starting to think the way they thought," he explained. "We just didn't know it." Dr. Sun Li Kang was busier than ever, helping people understand each new discovery. She had started a special program to teach children about what they had found. "The kids get it better than the adults sometimes," she told Se-young. "They're not surprised that aliens exist. They just want to know what we can learn from them." Hyunwoo and Yi-jin were planning new missions. Other countries wanted to send their own probes to study the ring. The whole world was working together now, sharing knowledge and resources in a way they never had before. "It's like the aliens knew exactly what we needed," Se-young wrote in her history. "They left us not just technology, but a reason to work together. Every country, every person on Earth. We're all part of this discovery." One evening, Dr. Park stood on the Institute's roof, looking at the stars. Dr. Kim joined him there, just like she had that first night when they discovered the black hole signs. "What do you think we'll find next?" she asked. Dr. Park thought about how much they had learned and how much more there was still to discover. "I think we'll find out that this is just the beginning," he said. "The aliens left us a gift, but it's also a test. Can we learn from it? Can we grow? Can we become something more than we are? Do you think we'll pass the test?" Dr. Kim asked. Dr. Park smiled as he watched more scientists arriving at the institute. People who used to be rivals were now working together. Countries that never got along were sharing discoveries. The whole world had changed, all because they found something strange in space and weren't afraid to look closer. "I think we already are," he said. "We're taking our first steps into a larger universe, and we're doing it together." The black hole that had always been there, waiting to be found, had given humanity more than just scientific knowledge. It had given them a future filled with possibilities and a reminder that in the vast universe, no one has to be alone.